Good morning, it's March 25th and we are here with our Climate Dispatch. Here joined by the Climate Solutions Caucus Co-Chairs, Representative Copeland Hanzas and Senator Pearson. It is a big week in the legislature. I'm here with my colleague Hierl of Vermont Conservation Voters, as always, and we are really grateful for the time with these two climate allies and longtime leaders, because this is a big week and sort of a little bit past the midpoint of the session and a lot of progress made. And these two legislative leaders are going to hit the highlights. We've been keeping you abreast on many of them, and you're probably going to get a few emails with a little bit more information about some of them, because, for example, today the Senate is going to vote, hopefully on second reading, of the environmental justice bill. So huge amounts of lifting when it comes to climate, including in the budget. And I'm going to turn it over to Representative Copeland Hanzas and Senator Pearson for hitting the highlights of some of the biggest climate progress we've seen really ever. So really exciting to be here with you this morning, and really thank you and all your colleagues for what you've done and what you're going to bring home to close the biennium.
No pressure.
Yeah.
No pressure.
We'll get that. Chris and I were reflecting earlier this week that we used to beg and plead for, $10 or $15 million. The big headline is that the House is moving a budget that makes $170 million plus in investments in climate action, in two major categories, the buildings and weatherization, home energy category, and then on the transportation side.
Big investments in charging stations, in electric vehicle incentives, and then the whopping investments relative to where we've been on weatherization, right? That's to me, that's one of the greater ones. 45 million, I think, for low-income weatherization. We celebrated a few years ago 17 million, right? Remember, we were like, we got it from 12 to 17.
Yeah.
Now they're like, oh, here's 45 million. So just to give folks a sense of the scale. And then on top of that, I think, and I want to say another 35 million for moderate, middle-income homes, which is really, really important. We've always prioritized low-income families because they also, many of them get LIHEAP, so we have to give them fuel, help them with fuel, and so it makes sense to tighten up those homes. But for middle-income families, it's really hard to make those upfront investments, and then of course you're saving money right away. So a lot to be excited about.
Yeah. And for homeowners, there's also help in upgrading your electrical capacity, because many of our homes, in order to be able to shift over to an electric vehicle and do home charging, or heat pumps or some other modifications to get off fossil fuels for heating your building, you got to get your home electricity upgraded. And so there's investments for that. And there's actually, what's really exciting about the moment that we're at is we are seeing sort of synergy among many different committees. And so, for instance, the money that's on the bottom line in the education fund, some of that's being set aside to create a program where our tech centers can buy a blighted property in their community, can do the weatherization and the upgrades of that property, so that the kids who are in that tech center are learning these skills, and then they can sell that property to a local family and keep that money going in that fund. And so to me, that's a really exciting way that our education fund is coming and saying, yep, we got to educate our workforce on how to do these jobs, and we also want to make sure that we're making our homes more efficient. So that's a cool program, and nice to see everybody pulling in the same direction.
Yeah, we've been saying that for years, right? The climate is not just an energy issue, and you two know it very well, but does impact every piece of our lives. We're also seeing movement on ways to help municipalities in public buildings locally invest in weatherization and understand, when we're going to replace furnaces at the library. How do we do that in a sustainable way, moving off fossil fuels? So some programs there that I think will be really important, particularly for town energy committees, folks that have been trying to figure that stuff out for a long time. Now the state's able to help with some access to revolving loans and some of that expertise. So
And grants, importantly, loans
good.
and grants.
Okay, good.
And And we are gonna share with you a long sort of summary of all these investments because there are so many. So we will follow up and make sure we give you the numbers for a bunch of these investments and the programs that you've heard are about to be deployed, ideally if we can bring it on home.
Yeah.
That's in your wheelhouse now.
Yeah, the Senate, well, I think the Senate's ready. I mean, that's what's exciting is, and truly, we did beg for $3 million for weatherization, what, 5 years ago? But now the culture's just changed, right? People understand, well, we've got to get off fossil fuel. Seeing $4.30 gas is really driving interest in electric vehicles. By the way, as I understand it, the budget also looks at charging stations in rental housing, and so some of these hurdles that we're seeing people are addressing, and they're not really controversial anymore. People understand that we're late, and it will be good for our economy, and it will be good for people in rural Vermont, and so the debate has really changed dramatically in the last few years, and it has a lot to do with the good work you're doing, and grassroots pressure makes all the difference, right? So I don't think the Senate's going to be a big barrier. I'm sure there'll be tussles and different priorities, but for instance, this is a little thing, and it's to some people it's a big thing. Divesting our pension funds from fossil fuels. Activists have been pushing this for 10 years at least. And in that time, we went from, that's a nice idea, to New York State divesting their pension plan, right? Green Mountain Power divesting, the Rockefeller Foundation divesting. Maybe not a radical position anymore. Even that is we're not getting there yet with the treasurer's still a hurdle, but the Senate budget looks like it will include a sort of roadmap. How do we do that? So the Senate's already, just a tiny example of the Senate's already doing its work, wondering how to change, add that to the House's good work. So the dynamics shifted, I would say, pretty in a way that's exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Is anything else you wanted to add?
No, I mean, we ran through earlier this week a lot of the bills that we've been working on, and it's an exciting moment because since we had this grassroots support to pass the Global Warming Solutions Act, we're now in a place where we're talking about how to achieve these things as opposed to whether or not we can afford to do this or that, and it's an exciting point to be at, but we also have to remember that we don't necessarily have the governor on board on everything that we're trying to move forward with, and so we really need grassroots support. We need people to contact their legislators and thank them for the good work, and also urge us to keep going because we like to hear from our climate activist constituents.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's a great segue because I always like to wrap up with how people can make their voice heard, and just first, thanks to both of you. I mean, really, I don't think we would be where we are today because you two have stepped up and building out the Climate Solutions Caucus as a powerful force in the State House, as an entity that's both done the legwork of what are the policies and investments, and then building the support within the building, and then having the grassroots partnership and knowing that there's support in the communities for what we're doing. So it's been just really amazing to see, and I'm so excited that we're able to come and share with you really, really just phenomenal progress compared to where we were a couple years ago. And so this week, our call to action is take a moment to reach out to all of your legislators, your representatives, your senators. Thank them for standing firm, for acting on climate at the scope and scale that was laid out in our climate action plan, that we need to be hitting our climate targets, and which we know is going to help people save money and do all the good things, create great jobs in our communities. And so for your representatives, that can be supporting the budget with the biggest climate investments Vermont has ever made. In the Senate, could thank people for hopefully passing the environmental justice bill and for getting ready to move forward huge climate investments and policies headed their way. So we'll be back with you next week. Thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to continuing this really important work together, and thanks for making your voices heard.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.